In this lecture, everyone, let's try to understand a scope of the variable. So we try to create a multiple variety of a variable. So while doing a programming inside a Python, even when we try to create a function, so we try to create a variable outside a function, inside a function, or maybe inside a nested function. So there are a different variable that we use to create, and it comes with a different kind of a scope. Some variable you will be able to access, some variable you will not be able to access or maybe update. So how this variable scope is going to work, this is something that we are going to understand inside this entire lecture, like a global variable, local variable, non-local variable, all sort of variable we will try to understand, which will help you out going forward to even do a real-time programming. So let's get started, guys, and let's try to understand these variables. So here, let's suppose I'm going to create a variable. So I'm going to create a function. So def I'm going to write, and then maybe I'm going to write a test over here, and inside that I'm going to create a local underscore variable. So this is one of the variable name I'm going to create, and here I'm going to write Sudhanshu. Okay, that's completely fine. And then maybe I can try to print this particular local variable. Okay, so local variable, let's try to print it down. Now execute. Now here, if I'm going to call this function test, yes, I will be able to access this particular data, this particular variable inside a function. I'm able to access this particular data, this particular variable inside a function. So whenever I'm going to call it, it is able to print my name, which is Sudhanshu, and which variable is defined inside a function. Again, so I'm repeating, inside a function I'm defining this particular variable. Now if I'm going to copy the same function, and maybe if I'm going to create one variable local underscore var, and here I'm going to write maybe kumar, and then copy and paste the same function. So see, local var and local var, right? So two local var I have created, one outside the function and one inside the function, as you can see. Yes, so one outside the function and one inside the function I'm going to create. Let's rename this function as test1. Okay, now execute. Now here, if I'm going to call test1, now just try to imagine which data it is going to print, whether it is going to print this data or it is going to print this data. Because see, this is also a data in the similar kind of a variable name, and this is also holding a data inside a function with the similar kind of a variable name. So if I'm going to execute it, you will be able to find out that it is, right, it is trying to call this local variable which is inside a function, not outside the function. Okay, inside the function, not outside the function. Now if I'm going to call maybe in this way, right, so a print and then here local var. Now you will get confused a little bit. So here it is trying to print, basically this particular variable, and if I'm going to call my function, it is printing a variable from inside. So outside, it is trying to access a variable from an outside, so not from inside a function. And inside function, right, variable will be called once I'm going to call a function itself. So see guys, here the thing is, whenever, so I have a full privilege to define or redefine a variable with the same name outside the function or inside the function. But if there is a variable which I have defined inside a function, so in case of function call, that variable will be given as a priority, so which is available inside the function. And let's suppose if I'm going to call this print statement which is outside my function, this print statement is not inside my function, the selected one, yes, the selected one, the selected print statement is not available inside the function. So by default, it will be able to access the outside variable, not a variable which is available inside a function. So that's the reason this print statement is trying to print, or it is trying to access this variable which is outside, which is Kumar. But when I'm trying to call a function, by default it is trying to invoke a variable which is available inside a function. Simple. Okay, fine. Now here, let's suppose I'm going to write maybe some different program over here. So here I can write GLO global underscore var. This is one of the variable name I'm going to create, and here let's suppose I'm writing Sudhanshu KUMAR, Sudhanshu Kumar, full name I'm going to write it down. Now here, if I'm going to create a function def, and maybe a test2 I'm going to create. Now here, if I'm going to print what? So print global var. Now let's see what is going to happen. So if I'm going to call test2, if I'm going to call test2, it is calling which one? It is calling a data from outside. It is calling data from outside. But in the previous one, it was trying to call a data from inside. So in the previous one, there was a variable which was available inside. So it was giving a priority to a local one. Local means which is available inside. Again, don't go after the name. Name wise, I can write variable name in any way. Global, local, anything which I want, I can try to write it down. But try to understand a logic behind this one. So here, there was a variable nearest. Nearest variable was a variable which was available inside a function, within a function, so it was giving a priority. Now here in this situation, there is no such data which is available inside the function. There is a data which was available outside the function, so it was giving now a priority to the outside one. But outside one will be having a second priority as compared to the inside one. If there is a variable with the same name available within a function, so it will try to always invoke that variable which is available within the function, inside the function, instead of invoking from the outside. But yes, if there is nothing which is available, obviously it will try to find out that whether there is a variable available outside, so it will try to revoke the outside variable. Simple. Okay, fine. So this is again a global scope variable. Global means a variable which is available to everyone. So now if I'm going to create maybe another function, so def test3 over here, def test3 over here, and then print print and print what? So global var. Now execute. Now if I'm going to call test3, so even this one will be able to access it. So again, there are two functions. Likewise, I can try to create maybe a 20, maybe 100 function. And if there is a variable outside, every function will be able to use it. Every function will be able to use this one. But let's suppose if there is a data which is available only inside a function, not outside. Forget about the outside one. The data available inside the function. So in that case, if I'm going to write another function, it will not be able to access it, because variable scope is within the function, limited to the scope of the function, limited to the indentation of the function itself. So it will not be able to access this one. But yes, this one anyone will be able to access in a easiest possible way. So this is the again something that you are supposed to understand, that if there is a data which is available just within the function, then outside function will not be able to access. So far, whatever understanding that we have, according to that understanding, it will not be able to access it. Maybe in future, I'm going to show you some example where I will be able to access it by doing some sort of a operation, additional operation, obviously. So this is again a variable. So one variable which I will be able to access inside any of the function which is possible. Now, let's suppose there is a variable called as counter. I'm going to define counter is equals to 0. By default, I'm going to define. Now I'm going to create one function called as increa increment underscore function. Let's suppose this is the function which I'm going to create over here. Now there is a counter. So counter is available what? Counter is available outside. Okay, counter is available outside. Now if I'm going to do counter is equals to counter plus 1. Counter is equals to counter plus 1. And then if I'm going to write print what? So print counter, execute. Now increment function, if I'm going to call increment function, I'm going to call. So here cannot access a local variable counter where it is not associated with the value. Cannot access a local variable counter. Cannot access a local variable counter. This is something that it is trying to tell me, right? Cannot access the local variable counter. So again, another edge case that is something we are able to encounter. So see guys, counter variable is already available, right? Line number 1, I have already written it. Although it's not a part of function, it's outside function. I'm just trying to access it. Yes, I'm just trying to access it. And then I'm just trying to increment the value of the counter. It is telling me that cannot access a local variable counter where it is not associated with the value. So this counter is available outside, not inside. I'm not able to access it. I'm not able to increment it. Okay, let's comment it down. Let's comment it down and now write counter is equals to 0. Now execute. Now I'm able to access it. Now execute once again. I'm able to access it, execute once again, I'm able to access it, execute once again, I'm able to access it. Now, why I'm executing multiple times? Why I'm executing multiple times? So I'm trying to show you that it is trying to take counter is equals to 0 all the time, right? It is not incrementing beyond 1. So by default value is equals to 0, right? By default value is equals to 0. Every time it is just trying to increment only one time. Only one time means it is trying to consider counter is equals to 0. I don't want to get into this kind of a situation. What I want is that I will be able to execute this counter and it should increment a value the number of times I'm going to execute my function. This is a situation which I'm looking for. How I will be able to do it? Because see, if I'm writing this counter outside, it is not able to access. If I'm writing it inside, the problem is it is just incrementing once, means every time counter is going to be reset and it is going to start from 0. So 0 plus 1, 1. This is something that it is trying to tell me. So what I can do is I can try to create this counter variable outside the function, which is a global one. And there is a keyword called as global. There is a keyword called as global. Now, what this keyword is going to do? This is the reserved keyword global, right? This is the reserved keyword global I can try to use. Now, if I'm going to execute it, it's working. Now, once again, try to execute, it's incrementing, once again, incrementing, once again, incrementing, once again, incrementing, once again, incrementing. So I believe I'm able to solve my use case, right? I'm able to solve my use case. So see, what will happen with this kind of a situation? So when I have made, so when I'm creating one variable outside the function, yes, so this is not within the scope of the function, it's completely outside the function, and inside the function I'm trying to recreate this variable by using a global. So what I'm trying to say in this line, the highlighted line, is that there is a variable which is available outside, right? There is a variable which is available outside the function. So allow me to make a changes in a global one. Allow me to make a changes into a global one, right? This is what it means. This is what it means. So in this way, I'm trying to change this one. Let's suppose if I'm going to write another function, I'm going to write another function increment fun1, okay? And now if I'm going to execute it, it's going to be, if I'm going to call this function, right? If I'm going to call this function, it's going to be 7. So till this function, it was 6. It simply means that this counter is not 0. So every time, whether it's a this function or maybe this function, increment function 1 or increment function only. So whenever this function will be called, it's directly updating which variable? The global one it is trying to update. The global one means both the function is trying to utilize, can I say, the same resources? Same resources. This is the counter resource, this is the counter variable. So it's the same resource which has been utilized by even this function and by even this function. By doing what? By making, or by saying that, okay, make it as a global. Means whatever changes you are trying to do, don't make a changes just in local, try to make a changes in a global one which is available outside the function. So this is the uses of a global keyword over here, guys. So in this way, you will be able to access a global. You will be even able to do a modification in a global. Even other function will be able to do the same thing. So let's suppose there is a counter which I should not increment, or which should not depend just on one single function, but it should also depends on all the function which is accessing a particular counter. I can just make it in this way, right? I can just write it in this way and my work will be done. Simple. Yes. So hope you are able to understand this particular example. Now, I'll try to give you another examples as well. So let's suppose I'm going to create outer outer underscore function. So because I'm going to create a function inside function, so I'm naming it as a outer function. And here outer underscore variable I'm going to create. So my name is SUDH. Okay, fine. So there is a function, inside that there is a variable, which is this one, which is holding a particular data set. Now def inner underscore function. This is the another function which I am trying to create. And inside that, I'm trying to print what? Outer variable, outer, not outer fun, outer variable. I'm trying to access. Okay, fine. And then I'm going to like return the inner function, and maybe I can try to execute it. And here I can try to call outer function. So I'm trying to call the outer function. Inside the outer function, I have an inner function, right? And I'm writing this print outer function variable. So whatever variable is available, which is outside this function, it's not available inside this particular function, inner function. It's available within outer function, but outside of inner function. So yes, I'm able to access it and I will be able to print it. Simple. So if there is a function inside function, so I will be able to access this variable and I will be able to access inside any of these functions. This is not at all difficult. Now, let's try to see bit different example of the same thing, outer and inner. So here, outer function I'm going to create, okay? And then there is a variable called as x. I'm going to write outer x over here. Outer x over here. There is a variable which I'm going to define. Now def inner function I'm going to create, and here I'm going to like write x is equals to inner x. Okay, fine. Now print basically what? So print basically x for me. Fine. And then try to return inner function out of this particular function, and then I'm going to write over here print basically x. Execute. Now if I'm going to call outer over here, outer function over here, so just try to like focus over here, guys. You will be able to find out again something interesting. So there is a variable x, and again there is a variable x. Value of these variables are different. So one variable is available inside outer function, which is outside inner. Another variable is available within the inner function. So I'm trying to write one print statement over here. Fine. I'm trying to call the inner function, and I'm trying to print this one. Okay. So technically this two will be executed. So it is going to call first of all inner function. So inner function means it is going to print what? Inner x. Inner x it is trying to print. Now I'm trying to print x. So print x means this x will be executed. So outer x it is going to call. Okay, that's completely fine. And that was pretty much obvious that it is going to call the same thing. Now I'll copy the same piece of code. I'll leave that one as it is. Now here, what I will do is I'll try to use a keyword called as non-local. I'm going to define non-local x. Fine. I'm going to define non-local x. Now execute. And now let's try to call the outer. You will be able to see a changes into a result. Last time it was printing inner x and outer x. This time it is trying to print inner x. Now what is a meaning of this one? I have just done one line of modification, which is a non-local. So non-local is again a reserved keyword. Simple. Non-local is also a reserved keyword. And here, so what it is trying to do is, it is trying to update the value of x, which is available outside, which is not local, right? Local means this one. This is the local for this function, at least for this inner function. So whenever inner function will be executed, these three line will be executed. Now when this three line will be executed, there is a variable called as x. So, and I'm trying to define non-local x. So it will always try to update even the non-local x. It will even try to update the non-local x with the inner values, with the latest one, with the latest x values. It will try to update it. So this is even updated. So when you're calling this print statement, it is printing inner x, not the outer x, because this became updated. This is now updated one. Simple, right? This is now the updated one. It is not able to call outer x. It is calling basically inner x because of this non-local. So I'm just saying that update even a non-local if we have a value update in further lines. So it is updating even the non-local one. So global keyword is one that we are able to understand, which is going to hit directly a global, and then it will make updates, and it will help you out to access it inside a scope of the function, which is not allowed without writing a global. Similarly, non-local is helping me out to update even a non-local data from inside. So from inside the function, we are able to update even a non-local data, which is basically an outer X. So hope you all are able to understand, guys, so what I'm talking about, right? So all of us are able to understand. So what is the scope of the variable and what is the meaning of global keyword or maybe a non-local keyword? Now let me write down a couple of more example for you. So X is equals to, let's suppose 5 I'm going to write, and def test 4 function I'm going to create. Now again I'm going to write X is equals to 10, let's suppose X is equals to 10. Now print what? So print X. Okay, fine, execute. Now here, if I'm going to call test4, if I'm going to call test4, it is going to print what? Inside X. Now if I'm directly going to print what? If I'm directly going to print X, if I'm going to directly print X, it is going to print 5, which is the outside one. So if I'm calling a function, it is giving me a data from inside. If I'm calling directly a variable, it is giving me data from outside. That's completely fine. That's particularly understood, right? That's particularly understood. Now, if I'm going to write non-local X, execute. Now, there is a issue. So last time, when I was trying to write non-local X, when I was trying to write, it was trying to update. But here, when I'm trying to write non-local X, it is giving me no binding for non-local X found. Okay, there is a binding which I have given, but the problem is this X was within the function, and then within the function I'm trying to write non-local X, but here I'm trying to make a change into a global one, and that is the reason. This is what I was trying to show you, that when I'm trying to write non-local X over here, it's not working. Let's write global over here. Execute, and execute. Now global is working because this is completely independent variable outside a function, not even a nested, not even a like a single step of nesting where this variable is available. So this is available completely outside the function. So here X is equals to 5. I'm just made global X. So global X 10, it will try to update even the global X. So test4 10, print X 10. So because my global variable has been updated. So this is how it is going to work for me, guys. Okay. So I believe we all are able to understand. Now let's try to understand some case of global in a nested function. So def outer, outer I'm going to create. Def inner, inner function inside function I'm going to create. Global X I'm going to create, and X is equals to maybe 13 I'm going to write. Then print basically what? Print basically X over here I'm going to write, and here inner. So just try to call this one. I have to write colon. I have to write colon over here. Okay, fine. Now just try to call outer. So outer X is equals to 13. I'm able to access it. Fine. X is equals to 13. I'm able to access it. Now print X. So print X. So X is equal to 13. I'm able to access it. So global is working in the exact same way it was working before. Previously, value of X was what? Value of X was 10. I have updated it by writing this global. So I'm just trying to show you global function inside function. Means inside the nesting, I'm just trying to show you the global. So inside a nesting, global is working in the exact same way. Whereas non-local is not going to work in the exact same way. So if it is not a nesting one, if it is a nesting, obviously it is going to update in the outer function. It is going to make it available into an outer function. But in case of global, it will work in nesting and even without nesting. In both the situation, it is going to work fine for me. So fine, guys, with that, thank you so much. Hope you are able to understand the scope of the variable. You all are able to understand what is the meaning of a global, what is the meaning of a non-local, what is the meaning of a local variable to a function, each and everything. So keep practicing, keep trying. Do let me know if you're facing any kind of issue with that. Thank you so much, everyone. See you again in my next lecture.